$97.30 per ton. Updated production estimates released by Statistics Canada yesterday remained a key driver as the canola crop came in at the low end of trade expectations at 18.7 million tons. While that would be the smallest crop in 5 years, exports are already running at a record pace. Canola has exported 4.2 million tons of canola through the first 17 weeks of the crop year. That's up by 1.2 million tons from the same point last year. The domestic crush is also solid. Gains in Chicago soy oil and Malaysian palm oil provided additional spillover support, but soybeans in the U.S. are posting small losses. Strength in the Canadian dollar touching 78 U.S. cents this morning also pressured values, as did Idea's canola is looking a bit overbought as the January contract needs the psychological $600 per ton mark. In the U.S., soybeans, corn, and wheat are all lower, with profit taking ahead of the weekend a feature there. Soybeans down 5 cents in the January contract at $11.63 per bushel. Mixed weather conditions in South America kept some caution in the bean market. While central and northern parts of Brazil are seeing some much needed rain, southern soybean growing regions do remain on the dry side. Expectations for increased soybean demand out of China were a bit supportive, as was the move to 8-year highs in Malaysian palm oil. Corn, it is down in sympathy with beans. The March contract 5 cents lower at $4.21 per bushel. Profit taking ahead of the weekend was a feature, with corn traders also following the weather news out of South America. Wheat is lower as well. Chicago down 8 cents in the March contract at $5.76 per bushel. Kansas City 6 cents lower in March at $5.43 per bushel, and Minneapolis spring wheat down 2 cents in the March contract at $5.51 per bushel. Large production estimates out of both Canada and Australia this week remained a bearish influence, although uncertainty over the state of Russia's winter wheat crop did provide some underlying support. That's a look at the ICE futures and U.S. markets for Friday, December 4th. In Winnipeg, for Markets Farm, I'm Phil Franz Workington.
See more and do more in a new 300 Series compact track loader from New Holland. Its industry-leading 360-degree visibility is truly something to see at Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John. With its reverse camera and 8-inch multifunction LCD display, super boom lift technology, rock-solid stability, and redesigned controls, you'll work with greater speed, safety, and precision. Maximum productivity starts with a clear view. Stop by Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John today, then see how a new 300 Series compact track loader helps you do more.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Moose Talks. A little later on, we're going to be checking in with Jessica Coleman of the Fort St. John Literacy Society. We haven't talked to her in a while. Lots happened with COVID-19, and they're looking for more funding for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. We're going to find out how you can help out there. But first, there's a new campaign that the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner has been putting on. It's called Am I Racist? We did a story about it at energeticcity.ca earlier this week. We wanted to talk a bit more about it, so I'm very glad to be joined now by BC's Human Rights Commissioner, Kasari Govender, who joins us from Vancouver. Good morning, Kasari. Welcome to Moose Talks. I'm sorry, I should turn on your microphone there. Welcome to Moose Talks, Kasari. I appreciate you taking some time for joining us today. I thought I'd start with the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner in the first place. Can you tell us a bit about what the Commission does, what you're responsible for?
Sure. So my office was established just over a year ago. We went for 17 years in the province without having a Human Rights Commission. In fact, we were the only place in the country that didn't have a Human Rights Commission. And what that meant was that we didn't have a body that was charged with looking at systemic human rights issues. We do have mechanisms for if you have a human rights complaint, you feel you've been discriminated against, you can bring a complaint to the Human Rights Tribunal. But we had no body that was charged with looking at the underlying reasons for discrimination and trying to do the education and law and policy change that's needed to overcome systemic issues. So that's what we're here for.
I see. And then I guess your job's kind of just an extension of that as the commissioner of the commission.
That's right. So the role of the Human Rights Commissioner is set up as an independent officer of the legislature, which means I'm set up like the ombudsperson or the auditor general, elections, all of these bodies. There's 9 of them that are set up kind of in a way to protect democracy. We're there as watchdogs, set up, and we report to the legislature. So we're nonpartisan. We don't report to the government of the day. We're not funded by the government of the day. We really report in the public interest to the legislature.
All right, and quickly, Kasari, I mean, I'm interested in you. How does one become BC's Human Rights Commissioner? How did that work out for you?
Well, it's definitely a dream come true for me. I've spent my career working on human rights issues. Mm-hmm. My background is as a constitutional lawyer, and I worked for over a decade with an organization called West Coast Leaf, which is a gender equality organization working on legal issues or using the law as a tool for social change. So I come from this legal background, but really using law as a mechanism for making exactly this kind of change to systems that will help human rights be better respected.
Now, as part of that, how much of this is sort of about reaching out to British Columbians to hear their stories, to hear sort of the challenges they face, or is it more about we're here, please, come to us and tell us about the challenges you're facing? Do you kind of do a little of both?
We do a little bit of both. Yes, we work in a number of areas. We have a strong function around education and engagement, as well as research and policy and law reform. So what that means, another way to think of all of that is sort of speaking to our hearts, our minds, and our hands. How do we change how we act? How do we change the institutions and systems that we're part of? And what concrete steps can we take to make all of that happen? And so we've been, one of the things that I've been doing over this first year of our work, besides building an organization during a global pandemic, we've also been doing a lot of outreach across the province. I've been engaging with hundreds of people across the province, hearing about your concerns, what's happening in your communities, and how do we build that in effectively to the work we're doing at the Human Rights Commission.
I see. And I believe you've got tell me if I'm wrong, you've got an office set up even in Fort St. John there where people can sort of engage with you. Is that correct?
No, at this point we have a physical office in Victoria and in Vancouver, but we're looking at doing hiring around the province so that we will have people located throughout the province. But I originally, just before COVID hit, had a cross-province tour planned out, only got to Prince George, and then the plug was pulled. I was headed for Kamloops and Kelowna the week that we all returned home. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing those engagements virtually, which has some advantages because I think I've been able to reach a lot more people. It's a lot easier for folks to sign in online, at least in some communities, than to show up in person. So we've been able to speak, as I say, to hundreds of people all the way across the province, and I've heard about concerns from access to housing as a human rights issue, access to drug treatment for people who want to access it, poverty-related issues, Indigenous rights, racism and the rise of racism across the province. We've heard about a huge range of issues from all 4 corners of the province.
Absolutely. And you mentioned education. I want to go back to that for a second. Is your focus on any kind of specific age group or age groups, or are you attempting to kind of make a broad sort of engagement with everybody of all age groups?
We really are aimed at as broad a population in the province as possible. So thinking about the age range, thinking about geography, rural versus urban, small communities and large communities. I'm thinking about people of all different abilities and education levels. So we're really trying to educate as broadly as possible and make our materials as accessible as possible in order to reach the largest portion of the population that we can.
All right. Well, speaking of those materials, you guys launched a campaign this week, if not very recently anyway, called Am I Racist? Tell us a bit about this campaign. What's it about?
Yeah, so the campaign is we launched the first stage of that campaign a couple of weeks ago, and you may have seen billboards around or on the backs of buses or in bus shelters around the province, and they ask that simple but uncomfortable question of, "Am I racist?" And what they are an invitation for folks to take a look inside, to recognize the racist stereotypes and biases that we all hold, and to take responsibility for those, to move aside the shame and guilt that can be associated with the word racism, and to take seriously that this is a responsibility that all of us hold, to try to combat these forces that have such a negative influence on so many in our province. And then this week, we launched part 2 of that campaign. So part 2 of that campaign digs a little bit deeper and asks more specific questions. Things like, if I want to forget BC's history, does that make me racist? If I assume you're not from here, does that make me racist? And if I say I don't see color, if I believe I don't see color, am I racist? And so some of these defenses that we put up around racism, I think actually perpetuate racism, and that's important to understand. Again, many of us are well-intentioned in offering these kinds of defenses, but it's our responsibility to take a harder look inside.
I want to talk about the shame and guilt for a second, because I think that's a very important point. I mean, you see people's defenses get up when they're sort of encountering their own racism. Say, well, hold on, I'm not racist. I mean, I meant that as a joke, or I meant to sort of explore this idea that maybe came out ill-timed or ill-worded or whatnot. How do you combat the shame and guilt, especially when, you might be dealing with older people like me, or even older people than me, who are so kind of entrenched in what they know and think already, and their defense mechanisms, as you put it. How do you deal with that? How are you hoping this campaign reaches out to those people?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and something that we thought long and hard about, and whether to use the word racist in the campaign, or would that raise too many defenses. And I know we run the risk, but I think it's also important to name racism for what it is, but also to acknowledge that this isn't, you don't have to be the person spray painting the swastika on the side of the community center. You don't need to be the person who's violently assaulting somebody else. In fact, as you say, it's the stereotypes and biases that we all grow up with, and that we all have in our communities and in our families, and therefore harbor ourselves, that we need to be take some responsibility for undoing. So in terms of the guilt and shame, one way we're trying to do that is I wrote an op-ed for the province, and really acknowledging my own biases and stereotypes. I'm someone who spent my whole career, and indeed my life, these values are very personal to me. I come from a family that is shaped by the forces of systemic racism in apartheid South Africa. I'm mixed race. So part of my father's family is Indian and comes from South Africa, and my father grew up under that regime. So it has very personal elements to me, and yet I also need to look inside. That op-ed I wrote, I acknowledge, just one of the times I've run up against my own stereotypes, and where there was a young girl in a class I was teaching, or in a group I was teaching, and she was wearing hijab, and she talked about her human rights, and she spoke so passionately and knowledgeably about her human rights, and I realized I was surprised that she knew. I didn't realize I harbored a stereotype that somehow, based on her religion, that she wouldn't know. How could I believe that? I don't consciously believe that at all. But subconsciously, I realized from the surprise I felt that indeed I did harbor some of that. So I think partly what we're trying to do is lead by example, and acknowledge that, we all have this, and that can help us overcome the guilt and shame. The other piece, I think, is to realize the impact that this kind of that racism has on our communities and the people around us. And there was a report released earlier this week that found widespread racism against Indigenous people in the healthcare system. If it's that widespread, it means that it's not just a few bad apples. It's not just extreme racism in our communities. It's subtle forms that can have a real impact on people's lives and well-being. So we all have a responsibility to tackle it.
Speaking of the responsibility, and this will have to be our kind of last point on this, I'm afraid, but as part of the campaign, at least according to your website, you kind of a bit of a call to action for people to not just be not racist, but to be anti-racist, which I'll admit bluntly is sort of the most frightening part for me in sort of looking at myself and how I am, is calling out racism, as you put it, when you see it or hear it, or your friends and your family. How can we do that? How can we overcome our sort of own defense mechanisms and be brave about being that way and calling it out when we see it?
Such a good question. And these things will only happen with practice. One of them is to, I agree that what we're doing is drawing attention to racism, but hopefully calling people into the conversation, saying there's more to learn here. And indeed, educating ourselves is one important step towards calling people in. So if somebody says, well, why can't they just get over it? Why do we have to keep revisiting our history? Isn't that ancient history? Well, knowing more about the history, knowing how recent it is, knowing how many people, for example, in your community may themselves have gone to residential schools or whose parents or grandparents went to residential schools, for example, might help you understand why this isn't just ancient history. It might help you communicate that to those around you when you hear those kinds of things being said.
Interesting. I mean, do you think it's effective if you hear it and you're calling it out and being brave? Does it move the conversation forward if I hear it, if I just said, hey, you're being racist right now? Or is there maybe a better way to approach that conversation with somebody?
I think one of the ways is what we've tried to do in this campaign, which is invite people to be self-reflective for themselves. I so appreciate how you've talked about how you're self-reflecting. I'm certainly doing that. And I've heard that from many people over this campaign so far, is that it's an invitation. So it doesn't have to be a public reflection. It can be what's happening for you inside your mind. You can do your own education, and inviting people into that conversation instead of being accusatory, I think is important. Some people for sure heard this question as accusatory, but it isn't posed that way. It's posed as, am I racist? What do I need to do? What do I need to read or think about in order to overcome this in my own life? And so again, I think it's more of an invitation than an accusation, more about education than shaming.
All right, Kasari, we're going to have to leave it there, but I really appreciate you again making some time for us today to talk about this. I thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
You're very welcome. That's Kasari Govender, the BC's Human Rights Commissioner. We'll be right back to talk to Jessica Coleman of the Fort St. John Literacy Society right after this.
If you're celebrating your first holiday season in your new home, Action Property Management hopes you enjoy every minute. If you're hoping to find a new home in 2021, Action Property Management would love to help. Houses, apartments, duplexes, they have some great options for short or long-term rentals. And they can even help you find a new home for your business. Happy holidays from Wanda and the staff at Action Property Management in Fort St. John or Dawson Creek on Facebook and at actionproperty.ca.
Help bring the light of hope to your community. United Way of Northern BC is bringing the Tree of Lights to Fort St. John. With this initiative, United Way is partnering with the North Peace Culture Centre to have a community Christmas tree and raise funds for some of the most vulnerable in our community. Anyone who donates before December 5th will be entered into the early bird draws for over $1,000 worth of prizes. Tune in on the United Way Tree of Lights Facebook page for the live stream giveaways at 5 p.m. on December 5th. The star on the top of the tree will be lit up once the goal of $10,000 is reached, but your help is needed to get there. Please donate now at unitedwaynbc.ca/FSJTOL or call 1-844-460-1040.
Your vehicle has worked really hard for you. From helping you take the kids to school to you showing it off to your friends. It definitely deserves a break with Moose FM's Dirtiest Vehicle, fueled by Murray GM. Enter now at moosefm.ca and you could win a free detailing package from Murray GM in Fort St. John. We will pick a new winner at the end of each month. Moose FM's Dirtiest Vehicle is fueled by Murray GM.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back to Moose Talks. We're now joined to talk all things Fort St. John Literacy Society with the Executive Director, Jessica Kalman. How's it going this morning, Jessica?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Got your name right that time, I think.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Jessica, we haven't chatted in some time. The last time was when you were looking for funding for the Imagination Library, which you're looking for again, and we'll get to that in a minute. But since then, COVID pandemic has hit. We've been through a first wave. We're into a second wave. I thought we'd start with how the Literacy Society has been dealing with that and still being able to deliver some of your services, if not all of them. How's that been so far this year for you?
It's been interesting. Definitely a lot of learning curves that are straight up. But we've moved all of our English as a second language classes to Zoom. So they are still being delivered virtually. Unfortunately, our classroom is just not big enough to have the amount of students that are enrolled all in the classroom at once. So it's going very well on Zoom. Unfortunately, our after-school homework help program had to be kind of put off because it gathers children from all different cohorts and schools and whatnot. So we've just sort of put that on pause. Mm-hmm. However, if children do need help with a specific need, they can get a hold of us. And if our tutors have time to meet one-on-one with them, we can probably figure that out. Mostly, we're just kind of trucking along best we can, trying to adapt to the scenarios that come up. So our tutoring program is still going ahead. We do need tutors, however, so we'll be putting a call out for that in the new year to see if anyone has some time, maybe an hour or two a week to meet either virtually or in person at a cafe or maybe the library to go over tutoring skills. But most of our programs are still running, just in a different capacity and at a different level.
I see. What would you say is the biggest challenge you've faced throughout the year? Is it moving everything online? Is it funding? Is it you've suddenly got a big influx of people who are hoping to use your services and you just you don't have room for them?
Yeah, funding for our extra programs like the Imagination Library, financial literacy, nutritional literacy, those are what we call our extra programs. They're not provincially or federally funded. So those extra ones we are looking for funding for because, of course, we had to cancel all of our fundraising events this year. So that put us in a little bit of a tough spot. But other than that, it's finding tutors who have time. It's finding spaces where we can get a couple people together and do some maybe community connection things. I think the biggest overarching concern that we have is really the mental state of a lot of our clients because they're used to having those events and those connections out in the community. So it's how we can help them to let them know that we're still here to help them and that there's a bunch of other resources in town that can help them to really have that sense of belonging and a place to reach out to should they need.
All right, well, let's talk about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. First of all, for people who don't know what it is, tell us a bit about it and what Dolly Parton has done.
Yeah, so this is a very excellent program that Dolly has created. It's a program where she gets a panel of professionals and experts as far as social emotional connection, psychological development, literacy, arts and culture, and they all kind of sit in a committee, and they're the ones who pick the books who get sent out to the children. So every child enrolled in our community gets a free book a month mailed to them. Currently, we have, it just processed the other day, so some kids graduated out and we had some new enrollments. So our numbers as of today are 823 kids.
Wow.
And we're taking enrollments right now. Yeah, so it's really cool that many children in our community are receiving one of these books a month, thanks to all of the supporters who help us.
And I should say I know a bit about this because my daughter is enrolled in it. Each country kind of has their own books rolled out. So what we get in Canada is different than the United States gets or the UK gets. It's really, they really work hard to kind of make it,
Yes.
as you say, educational, kind of touching on all those bases, and local, about kind of where you're from, you know?
Yeah, it's very cool. They have Canadian authors, Indigenous artists and authors, so they're pulling books that relate to Canadian culture, which is very, very cool for the kiddos to be getting some of that little tidbits of information included in their books that they may not otherwise get, and it's a fun way for them to learn about it because who doesn't like a story?
Absolutely. So you're looking for funding for that right now. Do you know how much you'll need to kind of keep the program going?
So right now the program is funded until March. So as of March, each month costs us about $3,000. So we're in kind of a unique situation right now because we have an online event happening. On December 9th, we will be we'll be broadcasting the worldwide premiere of Dolly Parton's documentary, The Library That Dolly Built, which celebrates the people who made Dolly's dream come true with her imagination library. So there'll be that will be streamed, and then it will be followed by a live performance by Dolly and a Q&A session with her. And then paired with that, there's a Facebook fundraiser. So our goal is $2,000 to help us support the program just a little bit further. For those that are competitive, I did notice that Dawson met and exceeded their goal within 24 hours. So surely Fort St. John can help us to reach our goal as well.
Yeah, surely we're better than the mile zero city. Come on.
Yeah, just some friendly competition.
Excellent. Okay, and you were also going to, there was another event you wanted to talk about before we go. That's coming up as well, I believe.
Yeah, so in partnership with Murray GM, they're going to help us create some family literacy packages that will be going out with food hampers this year through the Salvation Army and Women's Resource Society. So they are doing a new board and book drive so that we can include those in the packages. So if anyone has the ability to donate some either new books or board games or both, then you're welcome to drop those off at Murray GM by December 15th so we can get those included in the packages as well.
Excellent. To donate, if you want to donate to keep the Imagination Library going, you said the fundraiser is on Facebook. Is that the only way we can donate? Is there other ways?
You can always donate through our website, which is www.fsjliteracy.ca. There's a donate now button there. Otherwise, for this specific fundraiser, it is through Facebook. It's kind of the way actually the Imagination Library has set it up. I had to learn all the ins and outs of Facebook in order to have it streamed live and to have the fundraiser linked to our account. So all of the funds that are donated through that will go to support the books right here in Fort St. John. It's not going anywhere else. It stays local.
All right. Well, Jessica, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk about this, and I hope the fundraiser goes well.
Thank you. Well, thank you again for having me. It was great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Always good to talk to you, too. All right. That's Jessica Kalman, the Executive Director of the Fort St. John Literacy Society. We'll be right back to wrap things up after this on Moose Talks.
The new Friends combo from Panago is the perfect pizza party for two. So whether it's your pal or partner, your mate or broski, a bubble buddy, BFF, comrade or compatriot, or even just a really hungry alter ego, the Friends combo was made to share with your closest at a distance amigos. Right now, get any large recipe pizza, chicken bites, and 2 pops for only $28. Order yours at panago.com.
Ugh, this dishwasher literally only has one job, and look at all the dishes that don't come clean.
Oh, first you soak them, then soap, quick scrub, and then into the dishwasher.
In that case, this isn't the dishwasher. You're the dishwasher. We need a modern, efficient one that does its job. Let's go to City Furniture where there's an extended warranty on appliances, just in case.
So, no more dish duty for me?
Well, maybe just the pots.
Buy it today and take it home today, plus financing to suit you. City Furniture in Dawson Creek and Fort St. John.
If you're looking for hassle-free internet services, call the Peace Region Internet Society today. With coverage throughout most of the Peace, PRIS can get you connected quickly without the hassle of contracts or bundles. Visit PRIS.ca or call 1-800-768-3311 for more information.
Hi, this is Ted with PIMS Production Equipment. Talk to us at PIMS for electrical work, air compressors, pumps, valves, relief valves, office phones, and computer networks. Experience the best in service. Check us out at PIMS.ca or call PIMS at 250-787-0808.
Think you deserve a free sub from Quiznos? Then download the Quiznos Toasty Points app. Scan the barcode on the receipt and get a free small sub with any purchase. The Quiznos Toasty Points app. Download it today. It doesn't get better tasting than Quiznos, beside Walmart.
Our community first. This is Moose Talks with Dub Craig on Moose FM.
Our thanks again to our guests, Kasari Govender, the BC Human Rights Commissioner, and Jessica Kalman for the Fort St. John Literacy Society for joining us today. Check out energeticcity.ca to see all your local news, and you can check out previous episodes of the Moose Talks podcast. Also, make sure you go there because we've put up the Faro Construction Christmas Lights map. We need help creating it, so we're asking you to join us. We want to showcase all the best holiday displays throughout Fort St. John, so you can check the map to find out where they are and tell us about your display or your neighbor's display, whatnot. You can see that map right now at energeticcity.ca/Christmas. Big thanks to Faro Construction for helping us out with that. That's it for this episode of Moose Talks. Adam Rayburn's the producer. I'm Dub Craig. Be well.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace. It's Christmas morning. You all excitedly gather